Back to Open as we continue our discussion with Alexandra Barker, Data Dissemination Specialist and Media Relations from the U.S. Census Bureau. Welcome back. So we were just talking about the census and the surveys that you're doing in between the various census every 10 years. So what can you share with us about the findings from the Bronx?
Okay, so I did bring some nice information about the Bronx, from our programs,
Fantastic.
especially from the American Community Survey. So just about population, in the Bronx, our last estimate, the population was about 1.4 million, and this is as of July 1st, 13. So there was an increase in 2.4% in population since the 2010 census.
Wow.
And we also have females. We have more females in the Bronx than males, about 53% of your population.
Yes, go ladies.
Yes.
That's interesting that you said was 2.4%
increase in population
from 2010, and it's only been 4 years.
And that's 13 estimates. So it's actually, you're looking at 3 years because the estimates for 2010 is April 1st, and then you have these estimates for July 1st, 13. So it's like 3 years, 2.4 increase.
That's a big jump.
Yes.
What you were talking about, like that's why we need to keep these accurate records with surveys every year, every month, instead of every 10 years.
Yeah, so you know how it's changing, how quickly it's changing.
Right, wow.
Yes. We also have some information about race and ethnicity. I think that's always important to know how diverse the population is. So for the Bronx, I think that probably is not a surprise to all of you. We have the population, 54% of the people in the Bronx are of Hispanic ethnicity. Just keep in mind that Hispanics can be of any race.
Right.
But as talking about race, we have three major groups here too. We have whites alone, not Hispanic, about 22% of your population. We have black populations, about 34% of the Bronx population.
And that's black, non-Hispanic.
It's black, non-Hispanic, that's right. And then we have some other race, about 40%, which could be Hispanic or any person identified as some other race.
Right.
And one thing I also find interesting about the Bronx is the large foreign-born population. It's about 35% of the people living in the Bronx. They are foreign-born. They are foreign-born, yeah. And you have about 45%, they were naturalized U.S. citizens of the foreign-born population.
Okay, so that's not too bad. And people working toward getting their green card or citizenship, that's fantastic. So then I guess it wouldn't be a surprise to anybody, being that the Hispanic population is the largest, that therefore Spanish is the language that's spoken most often in the Bronx. But do we have other language diversity here?
Certainly, you may. I did bring data specifically on the language. We do have actually a graph that will bring groups like the Indo-European languages. They have 9.7% speaking Indo-European languages here. Asian languages about 2.3%. Other languages about 7.4%. But clearly, with a population who speak other language at home other than English, you have about 80% speaking Spanish. And within this population of Spanish speakers, about 45% answer that they do not speak English very well. So there you have a group that will need assistance with translation and a variety of services and language services. So that can inform decisions on whether to use
and that's important
language
again,
services.
As we were talking about, there are populations that maybe just do not know because they don't speak the language or they can't read, and there are opportunities open to them, and the Census Bureau can help us or help them also find ways to improve their situation through this kind of information.
Yeah.
So let's talk about education.
Yes.
Within our population, what's it like to be educated in the Bronx?
Well, when you talk about school dropouts, you have a rate of about 30% of school dropouts, which means you didn't complete high school. So you don't have a high school diploma, you left school before that. And when it comes to higher education, like a bachelor's degree, about 12.3% of the population of Bronx have a bachelor's degree. We do have data on school enrollment too. I didn't bring it today. Knowing who are in school right now, it's also important, knowing how many kids are enrolled in different grades. But when it comes to at least measuring the population that are 25 years and over, that have had a chance to graduate from college, let's put it that way,
right,
you have a 30% school dropout rate, and you have bachelor's degree 12.3%.
We didn't really speak about this particularly, but I do have a question about commutes to work. Can you tell us a little bit about
commuting to work?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do collect data on people, workers, and how they commute to work, if they drive, they use public transportation. And for the Bronx, it may not be a surprise that you know your community really well. Right. Data is basically just going to provide evidence, number evidence about what you know about your community. But in the Bronx, from all the workers 16 years and over, about 60% use public transportation to go to work. And It takes about, for those who drive, which is, let me just refer here, it's about 23% drive to work from here. It takes them an average of 43 minutes to get to work.
Right.
And this information, it's key for planners when they're looking where they're going to open maybe next train station, or even with stoplights that people are driving, how long it takes them. Should we improve transportation in this area, more buses, more trains? The data can be very rich. So if you look into detail, you'll be able to see how many people bike to work, how many work at home, and see how this is changing over time, which is the beauty of this survey, is looking at trends.
And that comes from the American Community Survey that you spoke
That's correct,
of.
yeah, and then you can see the trends, how it's changing.
Fantastic. Yeah. What else can we learn about like the socioeconomic situation from this American Community Survey?
Yeah, which is a big piece of information, especially when you went through economic crisis. Learning about jobs and income and poverty, it's really crucial for any community. Well, with employment, I can tell you that about 50% of the population 16 and over in the labor force are employed in the Bronx. That's what we have for employment.
16%? Wow.
50%.
Oh, 15, okay.
Yeah, the population 16 and over, which is considered in the labor force, 50% employed. And we also have some information on what industries they work. So we have 31.5% of your workers working on the educational services, healthcare, and social assistance industry. So that's the primary industry of work within the Bronx population. When it comes to income, which is also another important measure, the median household income in the Bronx was about $32,000 a year.
Okay.
And 27% of the households had income below $15,000 a year.
Wow.
And 4% had income over $150,000 a year.
4%, so we're not particularly rich people here in the Bronx.
Well, the data can show you what there's sometimes of disparities. And 24% of the households receive Social Security. So we also collect information on benefits.
Okay.
So you have a population receiving Social Security income right now. When it comes to poverty, which is another important statistics, we have 31% of people in the Bronx in 2012 were in poverty. And 44% of related children under 18 below the poverty level as well.
Wow.
And when you talk about the elderly community, you have 25% of the population 65 and over under poverty. So you do have 44% of children in poverty and 25% of the elderly in poverty.
Wow, that's a pretty big percentage.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's actually really important because we just recently, the Bronx Borough President has been talking about making a living wage here for people in the Bronx with new malls that are being built and things like that. And this is a perfect example of why we need that, of children and elderly, being below the poverty level. It's incredible. We need to have something in place that lets people take care of themselves and get them out of that poverty.
Yeah, and I was, as I read about the Bronx and about the data, I see you have a large female population, some of them head of households that actually, some data here showing, I believe I brought in a graph that shows that you have a large number of families with female householders. It's the poverty chart. When you see that most of the single moms, 42% of single moms are below poverty level too, it's an important piece of information. So you have like one single mom and children, 43% of population, that situation, poverty. That's another important piece of statistics for planning.
That is very
and for
important.
Services, yeah.
So is there any other interesting aspects about the community you'd like to share?
I also brought some information about health insurance and about tenure, whether you own or rent your home. In regards to health insurance, 85% of the population of the Bronx have health insurance.
Good.
51% of those use public insurance. And when it comes to children, about 4% of the children in the Bronx were uninsured in 2012.
Okay.
And aside from health insurance information, we also have some housing information. And you have a large population living, paying rent. So 81% of your population are renters. Only 19% own their home.
Homeowners.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And of those who rent, 62% spend more, 30% or more of the income in housing, in renting only, which is a big chunk of income used in housing. So this is some of the information I brought. There's a lot more than that. The data is very rich, and for any organization, our data is free, is public information, is our website, the statistics. For any organization looking into accessing our data for their grant application, for planning, please reach out to us in our office. We'll be glad to assist you with data increase, teach you how to access our data. It's a free service of the Census Bureau. All you have to do is call us. Can I give the number?
Yes,
of our
absolutely. Give the number. Sure.
Our department. It's 212-584-3440. You get to our department, the data dissemination department, and we can help you with any data you need.
Great. Thank you so much. I was just about to ask you that. If your address was selected for a Census Bureau survey, please participate. More than $400 billion in federal funds are distributed every year to states and communities based on data generated from the Census Bureau.